So yes, welcome to today's session on user permissions and customization. We're going to split this session basically in half. James is going to present for us about user settings. So we're going to touch on user settings, user roles, user profiles, how to add users and how to customize their access so that you can give the members of your team the right access that they need to help you and your organization with your finance flows. And then in the second part of the session, we'll look at organization settings. So we'll look at the different ways that you can customize ExpensePlus for your organization, how you can customize some of those key modules, as you'll see on the screen, things like purchases, receipts, expenditure approvals, and payments. We'll have a look at how we can customize those modules as well as a few other hints and tips on how you can use ExpensePlus and how you can customize it to work as best as it can for you and your organization. So I'm going to hand over to James to kick us off looking at user settings.
Great. Thank you so much, Jack. So to get to the user settings, we need to go to the main ExpensePlus settings. And there's two ways that we can do that. You can use this cog in the top right, or in the left-hand menu at the very bottom, we can go to our settings. So we're going to head there now, and we're going to click on users up here in the top left. And here we can see a list of our users. We can see the name, the email address. We can see the role that they have. We can see this MFA requirement. MFA stands for multi-factor authentication. And we can see the status as to whether they've set up the multi-factor authentication, and we can see over here the last activity. You'll see that one of your users has a star, and they are the system administrator. They're a point of contact both for your users, but also a point of contact for us if there are any issues with your account. And so the user role that's in this column here, that determines which screens you can access in ExpensePlus, and we'll give more on that later. And this last activity here tells you when they've last logged in. And note that if the user is linked to multiple organizations, and you may not know that because they may be using ExpensePlus with another organization that you have nothing to do with, this last activity will be for when they have logged into any organization, not just your organization. So that might not necessarily mean that that's the most recent thing that they've done inside your organization. It's just something to note. But actually, one thing that's here is that it helps you to see, well, when if they haven't used it for a while, that might help you to tell you that actually this person perhaps no longer needs access. So we can see, like down here, for example, Stan Wiggins, he's not logged in since 2021. So perhaps we need to consider whether he needs access anymore, and we might remove him. Especially as a finance team user, he will have access to everything. So if he doesn't need that anymore, we can protect our organization's data by deactivating. And if I press this deactivate button here, you will see in just a moment that he will disappear from this list. And if I go to manage deactivated, I can see that he is here in this list. And if I've done that by mistake, I can tick this box here and I can reactivate him in there. And also note that if he was a budget holder, if he was listed under any category as a budget holder, it would actually ask me at that point of deactivation if I wanted to bulk replace him, so that we're not left with any categories that don't have an approver. You'll see here as well that we can resend a welcome email if they've never logged in. Note we can't do that if they have logged in. We'll go into the welcome email in a little bit later. We can also deactivate the multi-factor authentication status. If, for example, say a user's got a new phone and they don't have access to their old phone and now they can't log in, you can come in here and deactivate that, which would enable them to log in. So that's what we're going to just look at on the user screen. Now we're going to have a look at the user roles screen. So as I've already mentioned, when you set up a user, you have to assign them a role, and you can see which role they're assigned on that previous screen we were looking at. And there are 6 default roles. You'll see we've got slightly more in here because we've added a custom one, but there are 6 default roles, and they're actually the top roles on here. There are two roles which are locked and you cannot make any changes to. And so those are the finance team user, and that user is the highest level of user access. If you have a finance team role, you can do anything on the system. You can change everything. You can edit every setting. You can change users. So that is the highest level of access. And so therefore it is not suitable for most people in your organization. Sometimes people think, oh, I've got a finance committee of 6 people, I should give them all the finance team role. That's not likely the case. It is really only for people who need to be able to edit transactions, often involved in the actual day-to-day reconciliation and management of the finances. If they're a finance committee member, there might be another role that they is more appropriate for them to have. And the other built-in role that can't be changed is the independent examiner or auditor role. And that is a view-only role that just gives access to your independent examiner or auditor to be able to view your transactions, all the data, but they cannot make any changes. And note that if you use one of the independent examiners that's on our approved list, then you would add them in a different way. We cover that in another session. And so I won't go into that just now. You can edit any of the other default roles that are in here, and you can also add new roles. And so we're just going to look now at customizing a role. So if we look at, for example, this trustee role, then we can set up here whether we require them to use the multi-factor authentication. And, you know, if we do say that it's enforced, that means that people will have to set it up before they log in. If we say that it's encouraged, it means that every time they log in, they'll be prompted to set it up, but they won't be forced to. And if it's optional, they won't be told, but they can go and set it up if they wish to. And of course, using multi-factor authentication does give more security to your organization's data. It means that if someone's password is compromised, somebody would not be able to log in to that account unless they have access to multi-factor authentication app, which only the user will have access to. So it does mean your data is secure. So it is something we would recommend enforcing for users, but that is totally up to you as to whether you actually do that. So generally, we'd say that within a user role, you only want to give them access to the things that they need. It makes their life easier. There's less options when they log in to look at. And it makes your life easier because they're less likely to make mistakes and change things but by accident that they're not supposed to. And you can see that within here you have for a lot of the options, you've got 2 columns of view only, which of course is hopefully that's self-explanatory, but means they can just view a particular screen. And standard means that they will be able to use all the functionality of that screen. So in the case of invoicing, if they had just view, then they would be able to view invoices, but they couldn't make new ones or make changes or make new customers, etc., etc. If they have standard, they'd be able to do that. And note, obviously, you can only have one ticked because it's one or the other that you can have. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look just at each of these settings and what they might do. Typically, they would refer to a particular module within ExpensePlus. That each line would refer to that. Some are self-explanatory, so I'll just skip over very briefly. And where we have these eye icons, I'll give a bit more explanation about that. So starting with the dashboard, that is the screen which if you're a finance team user, you'll be very used to. You see when you log in. If you want to give people access to that, to be able to see that, then you click the standard option here. Note that just because they can see the dashboard, it doesn't mean, for example, they can actually click into the check receipt screen or other screens. That will be set later down, which we'll come on to. Task management, and that's if you want them to access the task management module that we have that you can use to manage your monthly or weekly or recurring tasks. Invoicing I've already mentioned, so I won't go over that again. And bank deposit screen, with this, you can give users access here, but if you, for example, only want them to be able to record bank deposits against a specific bank account, then you can do that in the bank settings screen. And we'll just we'll just have a quick look at that in a moment. Enter purchases, hopefully that's self-explanatory. Checking receipts, the same. So approving expenditure on others' behalf. So this means that if, for example, somebody's away, you're giving that user permission to be able to go onto the approval screen and approve any approvals that are not their own. It doesn't matter if they're a category approver of any category or not, or they don't need to be a backup approver either. And so the warning is that if you give people access to this, it may mean that they can see all of your expenditure transactions within ExpensePlus. That is dependent on other settings, but it's just a warning with that. And so payments to make. And so again, ticking here will give them the option to see all payments in the payment screen. But if in a similar way to the bank deposit, if you only wanted them to see payments on a specific bank account, do that within the bank settings screen. Search all expenses. This will override and give them access to be able to search all expenditure transactions, even if they don't have access to that particular category within their own settings screen. Purchase approvals report. Hopefully that's self-explanatory, along with these other two reports. So I'll skip over those. And then again, bank reconciliation. It's similar to the others that I mentioned. This will give them access to all bank accounts, but you could do that specifically from within the bank settings. The same with petty cash. This will give access to all, but you can give access to specific petty cash from within the petty cash settings. Adjustments. This is for all organizations. You'll have access to fund transfers and income category transfers. And if you're on accruals, this screen is also the one where you do you can put in your manual accruals, accounts payable, accounts receivable, etc. Payroll upload, that's giving them access to that module. The same with the investments, loans, fixed assets, and year-end accounts. They're all individual modules that you'll see in this left-hand screen here. And so ticking those gives them access to that. Now, when we get onto the reports option, you'll see that for these first two, there's no tick boxes. There's no ability to be able to give them access to the summary by fund or the transactions, because that is set per user, per category. And again, we'll look at that in just a few minutes. So that's why you can't see any tick boxes here, if you're ever wondering that. And then with the summary / transactions by category connector report, this will give users with this role the ability to view everything on the income and expenditure summary by category report, but you're only able to view the transactions report for the category connectors which they have transactional level access to. So we know category connectors can connect multiple categories. So the ability to be able to see transactions within that report will be inherited from this setting, which is done within the user settings. And then we've got summary by project report. And again, we've got the same with the transactions. This, in this case, the transactions will be inherited from this permission. Now, when it comes to this setting, if you give access to transactions by fund, this will mean that they have access to all transactions in funds that they have access to. So it will override the category transaction settings. So again, a note of caution with that if you're wanting people to not have access to certain things. The same by category type, and the same by that project. It will give them access to transactions within all projects, and we can give access to individual projects at a summary level per project. And transactions by amount, this again will give access to all transactions based on which funds they have access to. All these other reports are a little bit more simple. So balance sheet for movement summary trial balance, the SOFA report, statement of cash flows. You, depending on your accounting basis, you won't have access. You won't see all these. If you work on receipts and payments, you won't see the SOFA, this statement of financial activities or the statement of cash flows, because that's not applicable. And the same with the Church of England parish return. If you're not a Church of England church, you won't see that option here. And if you're, for example, with other denominations like Elim, you will have additional options. So that would appear in here as well. And all transactions by match. Again, another warning here. Even if you've got donor names hidden for a user, donor names will still show on this particular report. So just a word of caution there. And that is also true for all transactions by account, and that's referring to yes, bank accounts. Now, with the donations section here, this gives you the option to manage donors, access the love giving, gift aid claims, church fee export. Hopefully those will be self-explanatory. And these are reports here that you can get access to. And so all of these relate to particular options, particular things that you can access within the donations module. And then finally, the settings module, then this would give users with this role the ability to change these settings. So a little note here that of course, with the exception of finance team users, then users with this permission can edit all other users' permissions, but they can't edit their own permissions. So that means they could set up new users with finance team role, even if they didn't have that themselves, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just going to check my notes just to see if I've covered everything there. Okay, and so we're just going to go through now creating a custom role. So I'm going to cancel out of this screen, head back to here. So if we wanted to add a new custom role, let's say, for example, you've got a trustee who is going to do some invoicing, and we probably don't want to give access to all of our trustees. Can't spell invoicing. All of our trustees to have access to the invoicing module, but we perhaps just want to give access to this one specific module. So in here, we might tick the invoicing module, and we might tick access to any other reports, perhaps that the trustees would normally have access to. And then once we've done that, we would submit that. And if we wanted to allocate a user to that role, and you note that currently we can see that no users actually have this role, we can go back to our user settings. We could pick up Tim here, for example, and we could set him to have this role. So again, I'm just going to check my notes to make sure we've gone through everything so far on this. And you may have within your user roles settings screen some roles which you don't need anymore. And if that's the case, again, you can see that here. You can't delete the default roles, even if they've got no one assigned to them. But any custom roles that you've created, if you don't use them anymore, you can delete them. So we'll just delete this one that I've just created just to show you that. So we just confirm that here. We click the bin icon and then confirm. Okay, so a few little top tips. So we just recommend you don't give users access to any more than they need. Again, less access is simpler for the users and simpler for you. We do recommend that you set MFA required for roles that have more access, and you can set it for everyone, but we recommend that you encourage it because that keeps your data safe. And we recommend that you have 2 to 3 finance team users access. So we recommend you don't have any more than that. But equally, we recommend you don't have any less than that because, if you are the only finance team user, it risks you being locked out. In particular, if your MFA goes wrong and you're the only finance team user, you won't be able to reset it. So we do recommend you have a minimum of 2, a maximum of roughly 3, although of course that's dependent on each organization and their own needs. Okay, so we've talked about the user roles. So from that screen, so we can further customize each user's permissions individually. So we're going to go ahead and add a new user just here. And on this screen, we can enter their name and we can enter their email address in here. And this is where we can select their role. So we might want to give Bob the user role. And here we can select their spouse. And note that what this will do is that this is to do with approvals. So if we set, I'm going to call it Bob Smith because we've already got a user that's called Bob Jones. But if we set the spouse to Jack, for example, then this would mean, or relation of some kind, this would mean that if Bob submits a purchase and Jack is the approver of the category he submits against, it will say, oh, we can't let Jack approve it. And it will, depending on your settings, it will go to the backup approver. And if there's no backup approver set, it will go for it will just be there for anyone to approve, but obviously not Bob himself and not Jack. Here we can give access to the purchase type. So we don't recommend giving access to any more than we need. Again, keeping things simple. And you've got the standard option here, which means they can submit these. And in some cases, then you've got the privileged option. And so this means that, for example, with an expense claim, if they have privileged, it means that as well as doing it for themselves, they can select a different payee and submit on behalf. We typically wouldn't recommend this because we encourage everyone to submit their own, but we recognize there may be reasons why you need to do it on behalf of somebody else. Of course, finance team users, they have all of these things by default. That can't be changed. So it's also where this screen is also where you can give access to the individual categories, both to be able to submit purchases against, but also to be able to view reports. So I've ticked the general fund and I've clicked view/edit. And in here, in the case of income, we can give people access either to individual categories at a summary level or individual categories at transactional level, or we can say, actually, this whole category group, I want this user to be able to access at summary level, and the same with the transactional level. Now, with expenditure, you'll see that there's this additional column, which is about whether they can submit a purchase against that particular category. But you've also got the summary and transactional level, which relates to the summary by fund reports. And so again, here, less is probably more, because if you only give the user access to what they need, it means that they're less likely to make posting errors. So I'm just going to check my notes, see where we've got to. Okay. So if we come out of, well, if we have now finished, we would press set, and then we can press submit. And as we can see, it's going to send Bob a welcome email. Oh, there we go. I didn't actually give him access to anything, which was why it was coming up with an error. There we are. So we submit that, and now Bob will have been added as a user. If you add a new category, then instead of going into each individual user, because if you've got 20 users and you want to give them all access to it, within the category settings screen, you can click a particular category, and at the bottom here, you can say, actually, do you know what? I want all of these users to have access to submit. So that's a little quicker way. If, for example, you're saying this particular category, I want every user to access, it saves you having to click into each user. If we go back to the user settings, then you'll see that by default that donor names are hidden except for finance team users. But a little note of caution on this: if someone's got access to the bank reconciliation screen, it's likely that your bank includes in the description the name of the donor. So even if you hide donor names, if they've got access to that screen, they're going to be able to see who the donors are. And when they get sent, a user gets sent a welcome email, just to mention that lets them know how to set a PP. It gives them a video of everything they need to know. And for finance team users, there's a further link to training, such as the live tour and the help guide, etc. So just a few final top tips. As we've already said, don't give access to users anything more than they need. Finance team users, they automatically have access to everything. And access to prior years is via the category settings screen. So because categories are not linked from one year to the next in the settings screen. So for example, if somebody has access to a category in 2026, it's possible that in 2025 they don't have access to that. And if you wanted them to have access to that, you'd need to go into your category settings screen. You cannot do that from the user settings screen because that only covers the current year. So we're going to stop there with user permission settings of this section. So you can customize loads more settings in your screen: funds, categories, bank accounts, categories, connectors, projects, etc. But we cover those in a separate lunch and learn session. So please do check those out and sign up for any that you're interested in. I'm going to hand over to Jack now for the second part of the session.
Thank you very much, James. That's really helpful to see how much there is available to customize for user roles and user profiles. And we recognize that that's a lot of different things that are customizable to make ExpensePlus as useful for you as possible. Many of your users are going to kind of require the same level of access, but it helps for those organizations that want to break down access per user in different ways. So that's really helpful. We're going to go on and look at our system settings now. So what can we do with ExpensePlus as for our system settings? We're going to go to our settings cog here or into our menu and access our settings down here. They'll take us to the same place, and we're going to click into our system settings, and we're just going to explore what there is here that we can customize kind of module by module. So if we look at our organization settings first, this is the screen where we can decide who our system administrator is going to be. So this can be edited and changed. It's also where we can declare the organization type of our organization. So if you are a church, there may be a breakdown further of things that are available and open to you. So for example, churches might also then have the option of turning on Church Suite or not, depending on whether they use Church Suite. But if you are a charity that doesn't use Church Suite, you don't need this module. You don't need the option of selecting that we use it or not. So that's really helpful. And again, like James highlighted, this organization is kind of a Church of England organization, and therefore there was a particular report for Church of England churches. In here, if you select Elim churches, there are customized reports and modules for that denomination of church as well. So that's really helpful for things like the Elim monthly return and a particular gift aid function that Elim churches require. This is also the screen where you can check your accounting basis. So like James said, there's accruals accounting or receipts and payments accounting. We just need to make sure that is set correctly. And if you are on an accruals basis, this is where you can select whether you want ExpensePlus to auto accrue your expenditure and income. And this is really helpful for your reporting and reducing the number of manual adjustments that you have to enter. So typically we would encourage those on accruals to have auto accruals enabled, allowing ExpensePlus to do a lot of the work for you. And saving you some time at year end as well. You can also set your base currency for your organization. Lots of our customers use Great British Pounds, but you can change that if your base currency for your organization is different. And you've also got the opportunity to turn on the VAT module. And a huge majority of our customers don't require this because there's a particular threshold of activity that needs to be met in order to turn it on. But if your organization does, need the VAT module, then this is where it can be turned on. You've also got the option to enable or hide the budgeting function. So in ExpensePlus, you can set budgets per category, and by default, this will be turned on. But if you would like to turn off budgeting within ExpensePlus, you can do that here as well. And then James mentioned transaction groups a little bit earlier. This is a further way to report and break down your income and expenditure within ExpensePlus. So we've got funds and categories, there's projects. Those are all ways to kind of break down income and expenditure. Category connectors add this extra dimension to your financial reports, but they do require anyone entering a purchase to select a transaction group as well as a fund and a category. So you're adding a little bit of extra work for your users when they enter a purchase. But what they are really helpful for are particularly churches that are multi-site or multi-parish benefices, or where you just need to track income and expenditure related to like a specific grant that you've received, because the expenditure might occur across different funds and different categories, but you want to pool it and view a report across various categories. So most organizations don't require transaction groups, but if you do, or if you're interested, then please check out the help guide article that we're going to post in the chat, because that will give you a little bit more information on what they're used for, but also how they work in ExpensePlus. If you are a church, as I said, you can then choose whether you use or do not use Church Suite, and this will therefore enable a different module of our Church Suite export if you do use if you do use Church Suite as well as ExpensePlus. And you also get to upload your logo to ExpensePlus too. This will show in your finance reports, and if you use the invoicing module, that will be included in your invoices if you would like it to be. In this screen, we can also see our financial years that we've used ExpensePlus for. This enables you to kind of lengthen or shorten your financial years in accordance with what you've done on the Charity Commission portal. So, for example, if your financial year currently ends on a strange date in the middle of a month, and you'd rather it didn't, so say your financial year currently ends on the 15th of February, you can request to change that within the Charity Commission portal, and then in this screen you can update ExpensePlus to match this. So that might extend your financial year or shorten your financial year for 1 year, and then you would reflect that within ExpensePlus. Typically, you won't need to come into the screen and edit your financial years. They kind of, if they just run 12 months, then ExpensePlus will automatically update that as you hit a new financial year. You can see that there is a kind of a status of locked or unlocked here for these financial years. We highly recommend that you lock any financial years for which you have kind of finished and finalized and signed off your year-end accounts, because that means that no one can come into ExpensePlus and accidentally change something within that financial year. So no one can kind of log an expense claim and accidentally date it in 2025 when actually it happened in 2026, which obviously wouldn't then be reflected in your year-end account. So we highly recommend coming in here and locking your financial years by clicking on this little button here as and when appropriate. This is also the screen where you can add a verified independent examiner or external bookkeeper. As James said, there's kind of two ways to do this. So you can add access for an ExpensePlus verified independent examiner or external auditor in here. But if that is not the case, if you use a different independent examiner or external bookkeeper, that's great. You can add them as a user and select that role for them in there as well. So two different ways that you can add your independent examiner or bookkeeper as you see fit. So those are our organization settings. Let's have a look then at our invoice settings. In here, you can add invoice profiles. So these are the way that you customize invoices by adding like logos and color schemes for different things, but also how you can set different bank details. So if you have a particular group of invoices that should be paid into a particular bank account, you can set different invoice profiles in here. You can view all your invoice items. So your invoice items are the things that you send invoices out for. So you might have, for example, in this organization, a large meeting room, a medium meeting room, and a small meeting room. You charge the same unit price each time for those things, in which case you can add an invoice item and add those to your invoices as you create them. If you offer a discount to certain hirers or certain customers, then you can add that in the invoice itself. You don't need to add another invoice item here for the small room costing £400, for example, rather than 450. You've got the ability to do that within the invoice. And we do run a separate Lunch and Learn that focuses on the invoicing module. So do check that out, either sign up for the next one or view the recording of the last one if you would like some more detail on invoice items. And the same for templates. So if you have invoices that you send out very regularly and you have kind of set costs, but also set allocations for where those costs go within your funds and categories, then you can create invoice templates in here, which makes creating those invoices nice and quick and smooth. And the last setting that you can customize in invoicing is whether you show quantities on your invoices. So therefore, if someone has hired a meeting room for 3 hours in the month, it would show as 3 times that invoice item. If not, it would just show a total. So that's the invoicing module settings. If we go into purchases, then we can have a look at some of the things we can customize here. So you can decide whether you are going to allow foreign currencies for purchases. So if any of your users make a purchase somewhere else than your base currency, so maybe you do a lot of purchasing in Europe and you want to allow people to submit purchases in euros, you can do that in here. Gifts of money is also something you can enable in the purchase setting screen. Gifts of money typically apply to churches. There might be things where you are having someone come and speak at your church and you want to give them a gift to say thank you. You can enable that for your whole organization within purchase settings, and then you will be able to submit those through the purchases screen. You can also set whether direct debits can be submitted from the purchase screen or not. We typically recommend that you don't, because direct debits can be reconciled more efficiently within the bank reconciliation module without the need to enter them as a purchase. But if you would rather enter them as a purchase and have that done upfront, you can do that within this screen. And then you can also set whether you want a reimbursement declaration to pop up when people are entering a purchase. So that is something that pops up saying, basically checking that the person submitting the purchase kind of acknowledges that they have made a purchase that is in line with your purchasing policy. It was for your organization. It is a sensible use of the organization's funds, shall we say. So you can set that in here, as well as adding any mileage rates. So if you allow users to submit mileage claims, then you can add mileage rates in here. You can do that very, very simply by adding mileage rate in here. You can call it what you want. You can set the rate as you want. You can set a secondary rate as well if you have a secondary rate after a certain number of miles. If you have mileage rates turned on as a purchase, then you need to have a mileage rate in here. So we've had several organizations in touch recently because the government have changed the standard recommended mileage rate. If you wanted to replace that, you would need to add a new mileage rate. That would allow you to then deactivate the previous mileage rate, because we don't want to change that rate, because if we change this one, it won't allow us. But if we wanted to change that from 45 pence to 55 pence, that would change all the previous mileage claims that have been using this mileage rate. So we don't want to do that. So that is your purchase settings. In our receipt settings, we can select whether we want direct debits to require a receipt, or whether that is optional. The same for supplier refund receipts. We can say whether we want to enable batch uploads. And now this is usually only required when people are starting using ExpensePlus and therefore are looking to kind of catch up the last couple of months of receipt uploads. So it's not something that is really required ongoing. And you can also select whether you want your receipt check purchase details to be detailed or more summary. So that is when, if we go to our receipts screen and we check an uploaded receipt, in here we can see this is the detailed view where we'll see the purchase date, the purchase type, the supplier, the description, the budget, and the purchase amount. If you want your receipt check screen to show less detail than that, then you can change that and you can make that a summary view rather than all of those details. And that is that for the receipt settings. In approvals, there are loads of things that we can customize in this module, which is one of the things that makes ExpensePlus so helpful. So in here, we can decide whether we want approvals to be switched on or not. We would highly recommend that you do have approval switched on at least in some way, but you don't have to. You can enable approvals by category rather than having all categories enabled as approvals. You can set a low value purchase that will be auto approved. So if we wanted all of our purchases that were less than £10 to be auto approved rather than having a budget holder approve them, we can do that within this screen as well. If we would like to have secondary approval on purchases, maybe kind of counter to your low value purchases, any approvals for purchases over a certain amount, probably not £2, but maybe if you want purchases over £500, say, to be approved by 2 people, you can select that in here. You can set that threshold and input who that secondary approver is going to be. You can decide whether you want supplier payments to require approval or not, as well as salary payments, whether they require approval or not. And then you can set in here what you want to happen for purchases that are submitted by the category approver. So if I was the category approver and I submitted a purchase against my own category, I can decide, well, I probably shouldn't decide, but you can decide whether that is assigned to a backup approver or it skips the approval stage if there is no backup category approver set. So that is all great things that we can customize in the approvals settings. In our payment settings, we get to set our default payment method as well as our default bank account. If we have chosen bank transfer, you get to switch on or off cross-fund payment grouping. Now, this is something that we would normally recommend allowing, that you can have cross-fund payment grouping. The reason you might choose to turn this off might be because you have particular funds that have a particular bank account attached to it, and therefore payments can only go out of that bank account, in which case you can turn that permission off. You can also then set your payment authorization details in here to match what is on your bank account. So if you have dual authorization on your bank account, then you should set up dual authorization within ExpensePlus as well to mirror that. Going a little bit further down, then we've got Love Giving. So Love Giving is an excellent online donations platform that is integrated with ExpensePlus. So if you do not have an online giving platform, then this might be something that you want to check out. This takes just a couple of minutes to set up and customize, and it gives you a fully customized giving page that you can link to from your website, or you can send particular links through emails, etc. So you get to connect your Stripe account so people can give directly to your Stripe account. You get to add a description about what your organization is and why people, this is what people would see when they're giving. You can set up which funds givers can donate to. So you can specify which funds you do and don't want people to give to, and they will be given an option in a drop down menu for that. So if you have a kind of a special ask for donations for a particular fund, you can select that and send out a particular giving link to that donation appeal. You can write a thank you message to anyone that donates to your organization, as well as being able to give donors the option to supply a message with their donation, so they can send a message to you as well. You can set your default frequency of donations as one-off, weekly or monthly, and you get to, as we say, your organization logo would appear in here if you added that in your organization settings. You get to choose whether that's standard size or large size within your Love Giving page. So if you're interested, do check out Love Giving. Do contact our support team if you'd like to know a little bit more about Love Giving. Okay, donor settings. Then in donor settings, this is a great screen to help you customize how you can filter and engage with your donors if you use Expense Plus to do your donor management. So you can add donor tags. So these are great ways of kind of compartmentalizing different donors in different ways. So you might have a whole bunch of donors and some of them are involved in your food bank. And so you can add a new donor tag called food bank. And then when you are adding your donors, you can tag them with the donor tag food bank. And then you can draw reports based on that donor tag if you want to. So you could pull all of your food bank donors into one report and see just data and information for those particular donors. So that's really helpful way of kind of pooling different categories, or categories isn't the right word for Expense Plus, but pooling your different donors for different purposes. You've also got engagement steps. So if you would like to use Expense Plus to track your donor engagement, you can do. You can add different steps in here, and you are able to then see that within your donor reports, whether your different donors have signed up for a newsletter, whether they have joined a small group, whether they have become a regular giver to your organization. Pledge events allow you to add pledge events. So if you are planning on a special offering and you want to engage your donors with a pledge, then you can create this here that will allow you to view what has been pledged. You can then, when those donations come in, compare information and track whether donors have given, whether they are still waiting to give to that particular pledge event or not. So that is, you add these in here, and then again you can see that within your donation reports. And then your reference prefixes. Expense Plus will give all of your donors a reference number. If you want to add a prefix to that, you can do. So usually this is for organizations that already have kind of reference numbers for their donors. You can customize that reference prefix in here. You can add up to 5 uppercase letters before that reference number. So that is our donor settings. We are going to go back to our system settings, and we've got one more section to look at, and that is gift aid. So if you would like to claim gift aid at the click of a button from within Expense Plus, then you set this up within your gift aid settings screen. So you can connect directly to HMRC and claim gift aid through Expense Plus. You will need to input all of your details that match your HMRC login in this screen. So you get to choose whether gift aid is enabled or disabled, and you can select when claims are dated from. So if you have already claimed gift aid on donations from before a certain date, and you want to claim gift aid from, say, the 1st of October 2024, then you can set that in here rather than leaving that as the date of today. So you can back claim through Expense Plus if you would like to. When you connect to HMRC, you enter those government gateway details in here. So these need to match what you use to sign in to the government gateway to claim gift aid for your organization. But you can add those details in here, and then you get to select what kind of GADS scheme you would like to be a part of. So regular GADS is a gift aid small donation scheme where you can claim gift aid on small donations made by cash donation or contactless card. The regular GADS scheme, you can find out more information about on the HMRC website, but they do also have something called the community building scheme. If you are part of the community building GADS scheme, you should already know what that entails. But if you would like to find out some more information about that, you can also do that on the HMRC website, and you can add your community buildings in here, whether you have one or more. That is where you add those details. So we've gone through some of the system settings. I appreciate that we have gone through quite a lot of information there. There are a few other top tips that we have. So there are a few other things that we can customize within Expense Plus. So in your bank and cash account settings, this is where we can add our bank accounts and connect to open banking, as well as close and delete bank accounts. So if you want to add a bank account or a petty cash account or a payment processor account, you can do that within this screen. And as you can see, we also have the ability to connect to open banking for a large number of bank accounts and building societies within ExpensePlus. You can do that in here. If you close a bank account, then you'll be able to reflect that within ExpensePlus as well, using the close button or the delete button. This would obviously depend on the current balance of your account, so you can't close an account within ExpensePlus that has money in it. But this is the screen where you can customize your bank and cash account details. You can also customize our suppliers and our payees within our settings. So within our suppliers, we can add new suppliers. We can import our suppliers. If we're new to ExpensePlus and we want to add a load of suppliers, we can import those in here, as well as merging any duplicates. And we can deactivate suppliers. If we don't have anything from a supplier for a long time, we can deactivate them by using this cross button here. But in the same way as with our user roles, with our user profiles, if we deactivate someone, but then we need to use them, we can manage our deactivated and reactivate those suppliers as well. That is the same for our payees. It's a very similar screen for our payees. We can add a new payee. We can import our payee details if we are starting to use ExpensePlus for the first time. This is where we can apply tags. We can also merge duplicates and manage deactivated payees in here as well. Let me just check my notes on what we have left to look at. So let's go to our bank matching screen for the final customization in here. So if we go into our match transaction screen, ExpensePlus also allows us to customize whether our invoices are displayed in our bank reconciliation module. So for some organizations, most organizations, I would say, they would like their invoices to display in the right-hand side table because it allows us to do one-for-one matching very easily. However, if your organization sends out lots and lots of invoices very regularly, you might not want the right-hand side table of your transactions to match to be kind of clogged up with 20, 30, 40 different invoices each month. So you can choose to hide those in the bank reconciliation screen. You'll obviously still be able to reconcile income that matches to those invoices by clicking on it and selecting an invoice payment in your bank reconciliation process.